teeth show us what's going on in the body? And how are we to keep our teeth in a world where it seems like so many people aren't? That's why I brought on Dr. Sharona Dayan. She is a Keep Your Teeth oral health advocate, a Harvard-trained periodontist, an oral medicine specialist, and a cancer biologist. And interestingly, her NIH-funded research led to the first ever genetic test for periodontal disease. Her expertise on this podcast will not only open your eyes to the often overlooked causes of tooth loss, but will also give you simple and natural strategies you can implement today right after this podcast to reduce your risk and improve not just your oral health, but your overall health. So let's find out how a healthy body starts with a healthy mouth. Dr. Dayan, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jodelle, for having me on your podcast. I'm a huge fan of your channel.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, because we have a lot to talk about when it comes to teeth. I had no idea how important certain aspects of our teeth can translate to our health overall. So, teeth isn't always the first thing on the mind of someone who's optimizing their health. We're always looking at diet or exercise or new supplements. But we're supposed to keep our teeth for a lifetime, right? And that's not really what we're seeing in today's world. So perhaps you can help us chew on why we should be more focused on our teeth.
Yes, absolutely. We are supposed to keep our teeth for a lifetime, and we're supposed to have room for all 32 of our teeth, including the wisdom teeth. And even in ancient Chinese medicine, it was recognized that all of the body meridians run through the teeth. So the teeth are like the circuit breakers for our bodies, and they help us with balance. They help us in so many ways. And so I feel that it's become so casual to say, oh, I'm losing a tooth, but it's not normal. It's not normal to lose your teeth.
Mm-mm. Yeah, and we do. I can't tell you how many clients I see that they're talking about, well, I'm getting this a tooth put in, or I'm getting dentures, or I'm getting, it's just more like it's like this casual conversation now.
Yes. Yes. And I feel that our bodies want us to know when there's something wrong. And the gums are one of the ways that the body signals us, because gum disease is an inflammatory condition. And almost always there is an underlying metabolic condition that is causing the inflammation and the bleeding gums. So I would really urge everyone to not ignore the signs of bleeding gums, because your body is trying to tell you something.
Absolutely. So why is tooth loss more prevalent today, would you say? Is it, what part of the modern world and even maybe the digital tech world is playing into our tooth loss?
Well, in my book, I talk about the modern day causes for tooth loss. And one of the big ones is not enough sun exposure, because we've become so indoors, and children are playing on their computers instead of going outside to play. And, there was a time that summers were spent outside in the swimming pool, and we just don't see that kind of an outdoor lifestyle as much anymore. So vitamin D deficiency, which we can talk about in detail, and the lack of sun exposure, because the sun is important for vitamin D, for melatonin, for natural vitamin A, for the red light healing therapy. So there are so many reasons why we should not be afraid to be outside in the sun. So I would say that is a big one. And mouth breathing instead of nose breathing, which is happening more in children and adults, because our jaws are getting smaller from our soft diets, from not enough breastfeeding. And so the muscles that are needed to grow the jaw to the full potential don't develop as much. So we need to take out our wisdom teeth more. We need braces more because there's not enough room for the teeth. And all of this sets up the person for mouth breathing,
Mhm.
and sleep apnea later on. And we know, actually, in your fantastic interview with Dr. Pete, he talked about how when you mouth breathe or you have sleep apnea, you lose too much carbon dioxide.
Mhm.
So you build up more lactic acid, which is pro-inflammatory, and it will cause the bone to resorb. So that's another factor. And also, I would say that nutrition, I find people are all over the place with their nutrition, and there are some elimination diets that I feel are making it harder for people to keep their teeth and reduce inflammation. So that might include eliminating glucose. That might include eliminating all animal foods, including eggs. That might include having overcooked vegetables and not fresh juices, and having a vitamin C deficiency. So all of these can contribute to a pro-inflammatory state. And also salt. I mean, so many people are afraid of natural salt, and
Right.
salt is so important for good oral health.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned your book, which is right here, Keep Your Teeth. This is such an easy read. Like, people really should get their hands on this, and it is for everybody because it's a practical guide for everyone to how to keep your teeth. And you mentioned nutrition in there, and you mentioned the part about what was interesting to me is sippy cups and bottles can even contribute to children at a very young age, contributing to the mouth breathing, as well as like a tongue tie. You don't even realize how powerful having a tongue tie is. And I found all of that very fascinating. Maybe even people listening will go, well, I had a tongue tie when I was little. Maybe that's why I have so many breathing issues. It can start as early as your first year of life. So also you've heard the term the skin of your teeth. I have a theory that this is kind of like the microbiome, that the skin of they got by the skin of their teeth. And I always want to say that's because you have a healthy microbiome in your mouth. So what do you think? Like, let's talk about the microbiome, because you mentioned that in your book as well. And people don't put much stock into that. They wipe it out, especially during COVID with all these antibacterial mouthwashes and teeth whiteners and so forth. How important is the health of our microbiome in our mouth?
Well, the gut microbiome starts with the mouth. And
Mm-hmm.
even though there is a different milieu of bacteria, certainly the mouth microbiome, which has hundreds of bacteria that, for the most part, are protective. They help us to digest food. The uh, breakdown of carbohydrates starts in the mouth, and the microbiome also help to keep out pathogenic bacteria. And when there is gum disease or periodontal disease, there's a shift from having a state of eubiosis, which is healthy, to having dysbiosis, where the bacteria that produce lactic acid, that produce endotoxin, overgrow because they find an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
uh, to do so.
Yeah, it's so prevalent. I mean, I see it in a lot of people, like you mentioned, with the bleeding gums. Like, that has to be an issue of the microbiome of the mouth. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. It can signal, absolutely, it signals a dysbiosis of the microbiome of the mouth. And it can also signal that there is an underlying metabolic weakness, like a low thyroid. If your thyroid is low, the inflammation will be more severe. And studies have shown that a low thyroid will make it more likely for the periodontal disease to spread to other parts of the body. So all of these are important when we want to think about comprehensively treating bleeding gums and inflammation, and really trying to help the patients unravel why they are having these issues.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned the bleeding gums being an actual thyroid symptom, because many people don't know that. And there's a lot of people that are just like, brushing their teeth and spitting out blood and think, oh, that's just me. And you might want to look a little deeper into that. Yeah.
Yes,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Let's go back to the nasal breathing, because I wanted to bring that out a little bit more, because nasal breathing does way more than just affects our oxygen levels. It's how we filter out the pollution in the environment. It's how we can actually change the look of our face by getting a more open airway and like increasing the amount of like facial space you have for taking in air. And myself included, like when I run, when I do anything that's heavy intensity, I try to only do it to the level where I can breathe through my nose, because I feel like not only do I want to get the most oxygen that I can through my nose, but also it actually keeps you in a calmer state. It keeps that cortisol from overfiring. So can you tell us more reasons why nasal breathing should be something that we're focusing on, not just for oral health, but in general?
Yes, we should be breathing through our noses day and night. The
Mhm.
only time is if we have a cold or a flu and we're congested. And then the mouth is an emergency
Right.
to breathe, but that should not be our habitual way of breathing. So the nose prepares the air for delivery to the lungs. It warms the air, it filters the air, it adds nitric oxide, which can disinfect the air, and also more air gets delivered to the lungs because of the vasodilation.
Mhm.
So the nose is the primary organ for breathing. And also for children, in order to breathe through the nose, if you pay attention, your mouth has to be closed and your tongue needs to be up against the palate.
Mhm.
And the tongue is a primary airway dilator. And it is one of the key muscles in developing the face and the airway in children.
Mhm.
And so these, sippy cups, bottles, they don't exercise the muscles enough. And if the child is mouth breathing, the tongue is going to be low. It's not going to be pushing up against the palate where the airway is. So the airway doesn't grow to its fullest potential. The muscles of the face and the cheekbones don't develop to their full potential. And the bone growth is determined by the muscles.
Mhm.
So, and then the teeth get crooked because there's not enough space. And it sets up the child for orthodontic treatment later on. And so, nose breathing is important for the airway. It's important for the development of the face and the
Mhm.
muscles and the cheekbones. So I would suggest to everybody to make it a goal to be a full-time nose breather.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great tip right there. You mentioned how the teeth are moving too, and you see that even in adults. I have clients that'll be like, I used to have straight teeth and now they're moving around. What have you seen as a major cause of this? Is this also due to more mouth breathing as we get older due to stress? Or could this actually be hormonal? I remember Dr. Ray Peat even mentioning to me that low progesterone can cause the teeth to move. Do you have any experience with that?
Well, our oral tissues and our gums are covered with estrogen receptors.
Mm.
And so, for example, women during pregnancy
Mhm.
might develop periodontal disease and they might develop bleeding gums because the mouth is very sensitive to estrogen and progesterone.
Mhm.
Uh, so definitely that is something, a hormonal balance is something that patients should really be aware of. And also, if there has been a history of mouth breathing, because the tongue is sitting low in the mouth instead of going up against the palate, the tongue develops a low tongue posture and it becomes weak.
Mhm.
And because of that, when you swallow, instead of bracing the tongue up against the palate in order to push the food into the throat, the tongue will push against the teeth.
Makes sense.
And because it's such a strong muscle, and then there's going to be compensation with the facial muscles, that can cause shifting of the teeth.
Mhm. So really, it'd be a good idea for people to be mindful of just like noticing, where am I holding my tongue? you know, like where does my tongue rest in my mouth? That might be something just to get into the habit of recognizing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Every time we swallow, the tongue should be pushing up
Mhm.
and swallowing with the back of the throat, not pushing against the teeth.
Mhm. Yeah, that's as a yoga instructor, we used to teach to help with breath, the ujjayi breath, but also just in general relaxing the body to keep that tongue in the roof of the mouth. So it's a good habit to get into for sure.
Mhm. Yes.
And I want to talk, I love something in your book that even you mentioned vitamin D, like that is so important for so many facets of our health, but for our teeth too. I mean, a lot of people know, yes, teeth are bones, but how powerful is sunlight? Like, let's set aside vitamin D as a supplement. How powerful is sunlight to our teeth and our oral health?
It's crucial. First of all, sunlight has a direct antimicrobial effect on pathogenic bacteria.
Okay.
So sunlight grows healthy bacteria and is antimicrobial for pathogenic bacteria. And vitamin D is critical for bone. That's how it was discovered in children with rickets. So the strength of the teeth and the strength of our jaw bones depends on vitamin D. In fact, there are several studies now emerging to show the effect of vitamin D on dental implants, because there are dental implants that are failing and getting infected, and they're showing that on the day of dental implant placement, the higher the vitamin D level, the more bone grew around the dental implant. And there was one study in Europe where it was a case report, and there were two gentlemen not related who both needed dental implants. The implants failed the first time they were placed, and they failed the second time. And then the doctors did a vitamin D test and found that the vitamin D levels were below rickets level. And then they supplemented the vitamin D and got them to more healthy levels around 50. And then they redid the implants, and the implants took.
Mhm.
So,
Wow.
yes. So, and the other important role that vitamin D plays is it controls the thyroid gland. So if the D goes low, the thyroid will go low. And as Dr. Pete mentioned in your interview, if your D is low and the thyroid is low, you can't hold on to minerals
No.
because magnesium is bound to ATP. So if the ATP levels in the cell drop, magnesium just gets washed out. And so that magnesium is another mineral that is critical for bone development and the strength of the bones
Oh,
and teeth.
yeah. That's so powerful, especially combining two doctors' little pearls of wisdom there. I love that. And I noticed something in your book that I had to mention too, is that even if people are taking the best D and they get sun exposure, but they're eating foods sprayed with glyphosate or using Roundup in their lifetime and somehow getting exposed to it, or using, you know, foods with pesticides and chemicals and things like that, you won't absorb your vitamin D. It inhibits it. So I just love that you mentioned that.
Yes. There are so many things we need to be careful about. And I want to mention there was one study done at University of Massachusetts on fruit that had glyphosate, apples, and they found that 15 minutes of soaking the apples in baking soda solution removed the pesticides, because
Good.
even organic fruits and vegetables can have pesticides because of the rain, unfortunately, is contaminated, the water. So even though it's much better to eat organically, you still have to be careful.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're just best to like what you said, find a way to wash them with like a natural way with baking soda, or if you have to, you know, get the skins off and just eat the apple itself. But yeah, organic is like a limiting our exposure to these things as much as we have control over. I mean, you don't have to be dogmatic, but as much as your life allows you to limit these exposures to this non-native thing, whether it's a glyphosate, whether it's a Wi-Fi, an EMF, anything that you can get out of the realm of your life that's not natural to the human body, then you want to do that because that's going to protect your teeth and all aspects of your health in general. And I love that you recommend in the book, going back to EMF and Wi-Fi, that you recommend turning off your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Now, I'm a huge advocate of that. I talk about that all the time. But even more than sleep, do you think our exposures, I really wanted to ask you this question, do you think our exposures to all this EMF from our smartphone that we're holding up to our face and our jaw plays a part in the demise of our oral health?
Well, the Wi-Fi definitely depletes magnesium, which
Mhm.
is so important. So I had my house hardwired.
Yeah.
So all of my computers are hardwired to the internet. Um, and as much as I can, I have my phone on airplane mode
Mhm.
when I'm not using it. And in my bedroom, even, I have a red lamp. So at night, my bedroom just has red light.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm trying to do all the things that I can in my home to make it relaxing for my body.
Mhm. Yeah. I just didn't know if you had seen any research on, we hold these basically little bitty cell phone towers to our head, and we don't expect that it's going to damage any part of our tissue that's right there, not to mention our brain that's right there, but more importantly, like just our health overall can be affected by these frequencies coming in all the time. And I just want people to be aware of that. Like, even the fine print of your smartphone says don't hold it within 2 inches of your body, and yet we slap it right against the side of our head. So it's like you wonder what kind of damage, when we're seeing all these people with cavitations and root canals and things like that, is it damaging and weakening that tissue in there?
I'm not aware of any studies regarding the mouth, but I do know that in children, that cell phone use and being close to the towers and is linked to brain cancer.
Sure.
So yeah, I think it's something that we really need to be mindful about. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and our jaw, we put the little AirPods in and we don't expect that Bluetooth is going to affect us, but you're literally pulling all kinds of frequency into the most important part of your head, which is your brain, but also your jaw sits right there, the inner ears, and we wonder why we have tinnitus or ringing of the ears and things like
Yeah,
that. So these are
yeah.
all things that I really want to bring to light for people. Let's talk about the jaw though, because earlier you mentioned how the jaw is getting smaller in a lot of people as they're aging due to what? What would you say?
I would say that there are a few reasons. Studies show that the nutrition of the mother while she's pregnant and also her breathing status, if the
Mhm.
mother is mouth breathing versus nose breathing, affects the growth and development of the child, and possibly even affecting this tongue tie situation that we're seeing so much of.
Mhm.
Um, and then during growth and development, ancestrally, children were breastfed for about 2 years and they went straight to adult food. Like Barbara O'Neill talks about this.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed your interview with her.
thank you.
And so they're not getting the muscle work that's necessary to grow the jaw bones fully.
Mhm.
And so later on in adulthood, it kind of catches up that as we go through hormonal changes and our throat muscles get a little soft, the tongue starts to collapse into the throat, and we become more prone to mouth breathing, snoring, and sleep apnea.
Mhm.
So there are studies that show that there is a direct correlation between mouth breathing in children and sleep apnea in adulthood.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I do off. I make growth appliances for my patients, and this is actually my own that I made for myself. It's like a little retainer, and
Mm.
you wear it at night. and the action of, and there's a screw, and every month you turn it, and it just helps to grow the bone and align the teeth organically in a slow way by sending messages to the brain and growing the bone at the sutures, so that there's more tongue space. And that really helps, not just to put a Band-Aid on the situation, but it really does help to treat the situation and get the tongue a little bit more room, posture the tongue up so that it doesn't collapse into the throat.
Absolutely. That's very innovative that you just came up with that sits right there. So that's something that people definitely, can they reach out to you and have one custom made for them? Is that how that works?
Yes, they are custom made. And so the appliance that I use is called a Homeoblock.
Hmm.
This was mentioned in the book Breath by James Nestor.
Yeah.
This is the appliance that he used for his sleep apnea. And so finding somebody nearby that can provide a Homeoblock appliance. There are other growth appliances like a DNA appliance. All of these are really fantastic, and they are very natural, and they just naturally help to continue the bone development that was curtailed.
Okay.
Maybe not 100%, but certainly there's a lot of improvement. And even for myself, I've noticed since I've been wearing mine for about 5 months now that I can see my back teeth a little bit more. So I'm getting a little bit of a wider smile, and I'm finding it's so much easier now to posture my tongue up.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I was
Mm-hmm.
just wondering it for people that, like you mentioned, have sleep apnea or are snoring, like if you've seen it decrease people who have snoring issues as well.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
great. Well, there you
Mm-hmm.
go. You don't have to get on a CPAP. Maybe you just need to realign your mouth, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes, that's the way to really treat it instead of putting a Band-Aid on it.
absolutely. Yeah. And who wants to wear a CPAP for the rest of their life? If there's another way, and a way that actually treats the issue, then why not, you know?
Yes, this does take about a year to a year and a half of
Mhm.
wearing it at night. So sometimes the CPAP is important as an emergency measure. Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Until the growth appliance can do its job and make that tongue space.
Right.
So every time you turn the screw, there's a 0.25 millimeter expansion. So
Okay.
when the appliance gets loose, you know that you've expanded to that level, and then you turn the screw, and then about every month or so, you advance it and open the space.
Isn't that cool? So you can actually see how you progress, because you'll put it in and you're like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
loose. Like I got to tighten the screw so things are moving. So that's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
Very cool. Let's talk about another issue that I have seen a lot of, which is bad breath. So a lot of people think that it starts in the mouth, but it really does start in the gut. But the mouth certainly has things to do with bad breath or halitosis. What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost always a combination because the gut health and oral health are so linked. So it's it's very rare that somebody has periodontal disease to the point of having bad breath, and that is from all the byproducts of the bacteria.
Mhm.
And so it's very rare for somebody to have periodontal disease and bad breath and not have a gut issue.
Mhm.
Um, and it also makes it more challenging to really get ahead of the periodontal disease when there is a gut issue. So like Dr. Dannenberg talked about in your fantastic interview, I highly recommend that interview. It's important to address both at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is one long tube from our mouth to our anus is one long tube. It's all connected. So if it's
Yes.
going on in the gut, it's probably going on in your mouth too, whether it's some sort of candida or yeast or fungus or bacteria overgrowth or undergrowth of good bacteria. Like you really do have to address it, not by just putting a mint in your mouth. It's going to take a little bit more than that. So
Right.
yeah. So what have you seen as far as like when somebody really wants to work on if they have bad breath, what have you seen them do to their gut or in general with their diet? What seems to work for your patients?
Well, in terms of the gut, what I find is if they are eating foods that are very difficult to digest,
Mhm.
like a lot of beans or a lot of nuts and seeds, and foods that are high in phosphate, I find that that makes it challenging for the gut.
Mhm.
And so some of the people who are very strict vegetarians and their source of protein might be beans, they are going to really struggle, and the food is going to be in the gut for several days. And then the kind of like, what happens in your trash can when the food stays in there for a few days, right? And so then these bad bacteria overgrow, and they produce the gas and the bloating, and then they can contribute to the bad breath. In terms of the mouth, my approach to treating gum disease and to uh, uh, specifically reducing the bacteria that are causing inflammation and the bad breath, I use laser technology. There's a procedure called LANAP, which is FDA approved to reverse gum disease. And what I love is that it just uses like near infrared and red light, because the pathogenic bacteria have a specific staining that is absorbed by this laser.
Okay.
So you're not killing the good bacteria. You're specifically killing the harmful bacteria, and you're not removing tissue. And so the pocket becomes very clean. And then the biostim effect of it increases collagen production, so that the gums can reattach. And that is really my favorite way to treat gum disease. And I know Dr. Dannenberg was also a LANAP clinician. So for those of us who are more holistic, that's really our preferred way of treating gum disease.
Very cool. Yeah, and the bone is a tissue. I think people forget that it's a living tissue, and it is, coming and going all the time, just like the cells of our body. We lose cells, we gain cells. And you'll hear a lot of things about like this compound called hydroxyapatite and remineralizing the teeth. Is that something people can do? Can they remineralize their teeth with just using a certain compound, or should it really be done from the inside out as well?
Yeah, in the very early stages of a cavity, you can reverse and remineralize the teeth. And certainly at any stage, if you find out that you have a low vitamin D and you take your minerals, and vitamin C is very important for collagen, for building teeth and bone. And if you really take a focused approach on addressing any deficiencies that you might have, absolutely, you can make the teeth stronger, you can make the bones stronger. So teeth and bones are living tissues.
Mhm.
So they absolutely can be improved at any stage of life.
Yeah.
And something that I recommend for my patients is to check their vitamin C using these urine strips.
Oh, okay.
So vitamin C plays a very important role in oral health because it's antimicrobial. It helps to build collagen. And if you're having juice that's been pasteurized, if you're heating your fruits, vegetables, you're going to lose the vitamin C.
Right.
So it's really good to test and find out exactly where you're at and supplement according to what your levels are.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So that's good to know. And maybe if we do find a toothpaste with like hydroxyapatite, that might be good as just a daily kind of remineralizer. Do you like that?
Yes, there are toothpaste, like there is a MI paste that you can get through a dentist that does help to recalcify teeth.
Okay.
And so I really recommend that. And I I know this might resonate with you, but I actually have done videos for my YouTube channel on DIY toothpaste.
Ooh.
I like using coconut oil
Mhm,
as a base and adding some baking soda
mhm,
and a little bit of either xylitol or stevia, which are antimicrobial,
mhm.
and then maybe essential oil like peppermint, that's antimicrobial. And, that's a really good DIY uh, toothpaste for home use.
I love that. I'm gonna try that because I think you just saved people like $10 because toothpaste, like really good toothpaste, is getting ridiculous. You can go buy the cheap, crushed fluoride full stuff. But if you want really good toothpaste, man, you're gonna pay like $10 or more for a tube of toothpaste. So I think you just saved people a bunch of money. I'm gonna try that too because it sounds like a fantastic little recipe and easy. Everybody usually has those things on hand. So
Exactly. And you get a little bit of the oil pulling effect,
yeah.
so yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Now, earlier I mentioned that the eyes are the windows to, what's going on in the gut. Can we look at certain teeth and if one tooth is having an issue, can it translate to something in the body is having an issue? Like, for instance, let's say all of your teeth or certain teeth are sensitive, and every time you drink water or eat something, those teeth really flare up. Is that indicative of something in the body?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. I mean, inflammation around the teeth, it definitely is indicating inflammation in the body.
Mhm.
And um, the Chinese actually mapped out the teeth, and also in Germany, they use a lot of the tooth organ charts where they've mapped out each tooth that is related to a specific organ. And there are some highly advanced physicians that when they get patients that have cancer or have some kind of a chronic metabolic disease,
Mhm.
they will actually try to trace and see which teeth might be contributing to their condition.
Mhm.
Um, so, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's so cool that, sometimes our bodies give us signals in one area that something else is going on in another area. So I love that. So pay attention to those signals. And going back to the foods you were mentioning, like you mentioned how vegans, maybe they're going to experience some teeth loss or bone loss if they're not getting the tissue remineralized. I think it also has to do with the amino acids from protein, because protein doesn't just build muscle, but if bone and teeth are a tissue too, then we
Yeah.
need those amino acids to rebuild strong teeth and bone. So I'm sure this pro-metabolic crowd will be happy to know that you're a big fan of animal protein, aren't you?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I think the basis of a good dental diet is orange juice and fruits should be a big part, and milk. And I personally recommend raw milk, uh, because I think the pasteurization might change the proteins, but definitely, any milk is better than no milk.
Mhm.
And cheese, because like in so many countries, they serve cheese for dessert because it helps to lower the acidity after a meal and to help to lower the pH, to make the teeth less um, less likely to get decay and things like that. So I really recommend cheese
Mhm.
and 2 eggs a day cooked in butter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, bone broth,
Mhm.
I think is really important. I would say that um, with the occasional seafood and the occasional meat for iron, I think that is a great dental diet.
Yeah. And meat is, you got to chew your meat. So that's good for the jaw muscles and helping with the health of just keeping those muscles around the teeth and jaws strong. So
Yes, I tell my patients, get the toughest meat you can find. Don't get the filet mignon.
right.
Get something tough that you have to really chew a lot. And
Yeah.
also Dr. Pete's carrot salad. So I don't,
Mhm.
I know shredding it makes it easier to digest, but that carrot is really good for exercising the
Yeah.
muscles as well.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
love chewing on carrots. I mean, even
Yes,
one
that's great.
long whole carrot, I just love to gnaw on it. So
Me too. Yeah. So
yeah. No, that's so great. So as far as like when it comes to three foods, like you mentioned the orange juice, the meat, and maybe like finding meat that's actually really chewy, maybe like the foods that are the best for the teeth, like share those, maybe your top three foods, but also like let's talk hydration. Let's talk like remineralizing the teeth through electrolytes and minerals too, because I look at a lot of hair mineral tests, and it's really fascinating how low across the globe we are in minerals. And so that's really important for teeth health. So, but you got to hydrate right. And a lot of people are just drinking their water and not drinking the minerals. So, are there foods we can get minerals from? And then also, should we be adding electrolytes and minerals to our water for proper hydration?
Well, like orange juice is full of minerals and potassium. Coconut water is
Mhm.
a great source because we need the RDA for potassium is 4,700 milligrams,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
a lot.
Hmm.
So coconut water, I think, is a good source, and I do like electrolyte mixes. Um, and I do like float tanks, once a month to get the magnesium, a good dose of magnesium through the skin into the
Yeah.
system. And I completely agree with you that minerals are highly, highly overlooked. And so many people aren't having salt anymore.
Right.
So if they can just get some good quality sea salt, um, uh, and and salt the foods, that's also a really good way to get the minerals.
Yeah, and it is hard to come by with foods because our soil is just not mineral rich anymore. So,
Yes, yes.
okay, so there's a lot of tips here, nasal breathing, and you mentioned some things we can do nutrition wise. What about any supplements that you love for the teeth, as other than like a good vitamin D supplement? Is there any sort of supplement that you really gravitate towards people taking for oral health?
hmm well, if you find that if you check your vitamin C, and if you find that you have a hard time raising it with just like fruit juice or citrus, then I recommend an organic vitamin C supplement, because if it just says ascorbic acid, it
Yeah.
could be like glyphosate corn mixed with sulfuric acid and acetone. And
Yeah.
so I like an organic whole food based vitamin C, um, and uh, natural food-based iodine, because iodine is very antimicrobial, supports the gland. So having some either sea vegetables or seafood from the ocean, and now they also have like seaweed flakes.
Oh, yeah.
Selena has those. That is a good source of natural iodine, because it's hard to overdo iodine when it's from a food source. And I hesitate to recommend supplemental iodine because, I don't know, I feel like as a dentist, I don't know that I should be doing that. So food-based iodine, I definitely recommend. And the vitamin D should always have K2 with it, so that the calcium will get placed into bone and not just float around into the soft tissue. And in
Mhm.
fact, K2, vitamin K is an approved treatment for atherosclerosis in Japan.
Yeah.
So it's very essential for putting calcium into the bones and not in soft tissue. And then the B vitamins, which are essential, and coffee is a good source of the B vitamins, and so is liver. If we can have an organic liver once a month, twice a month, that is full of minerals that are bioavailable. So those are really the vitamins that I concentrate on the most.
I love
And
it.
calcium through milk and cheese. And Dr. Pete mentioned that for the vegetarian clients, boiling turnip leaves is a really good, and drinking the water is a good source of bioavailable calcium, and eating ground eggshells so that are finely dusted. So like a natural organic source of calcium.
Yes, very good tips. So again, we're going nasal breathing, we're eating protein, and you can get your calcium at the same time by oysters. I love recommending oysters because you can get your protein and your calcium.
Yes.
So that's a great thing to do too. And then, yeah, supplementing with iodine is brilliant. I love iodine. And I actually, as a nutritionist, recommend supplementing with like a Lugol's solution. And you can test yourself by doing a patch test on your body to see how much you need with a little patch. So how much your body absorbs. So it is great to hear a dentist recommend those things as well. Now, as far as like, is there anything in their behaviors, their life? You mentioned flossing in your book. You mentioned, obviously we need to brush our teeth and stuff like that. But lifestyle wise, is there things people can do to enhance their oral health?
Get out in the sun.
Yeah. I love that.
Try to, if it's possible, swim in natural waters, oceans, lakes, ponds. That's how we're supposed to get our minerals.
Yeah.
So, and then I find that stress is also another one of the underlying metabolic conditions that can really exacerbate periodontal disease. So any type of a stress reduction technique, which is really hard, I find these days, because we're just so all over the place, getting flooded with emails, text messages, and it's kind of a crazy life. So any time that you can meditate, find some space for yourself, the float tank.
Yeah.
For sensory deprivation, and one time I think I left my cell phone somewhere and I didn't have it for a day, and I couldn't believe how relaxed I felt.
Right. I love that.
Not having any access to my cell phone.
Yeah. Yeah, I love to recommend people like take a day and just tell your family and friends that my phone won't be off. It's like Sunday or whatever, and see how good you feel away from that little rectangle. So, but yeah, sometimes you have to schedule it in. Like we schedule our meetings in, but sometimes just take a moment and schedule for the next 2 hours here today. I'm not going to be doing anything. I'm just going to like sit in the sun, or I'm going to sit in a hammock and read a book, or I'm going to meditate. Like if you have to schedule it in, life gets in the way. So you got to make room for that stress management piece too. That's huge.
I totally agree with you. I think anything that's as important as that needs to be time blocked.
Yeah.
To the schedule. And I remember I was reading Deepak Chopra's book, and he said that every few months he would go out into the desert for 3 days and just be silent, not talk to anyone. And that was his way of charging his batteries.
Wow, that's powerful. Now, you
Mm-hmm.
said something earlier about coffee, which is right up my alley because I love coffee. However, as we all know, coffee can stain your teeth over time. So, do you have any like natural teeth whiteners, or maybe that toothpaste you mentioned? Maybe that's something that you can see some whitening with. But as I age, I want to keep drinking my coffee, but I don't want to get, stained teeth. So, what can you offer me there?
Yeah, so that baking soda, toothpaste will naturally lift stains off of the teeth. And also, you can once in a while rinse. I have a DIY mouthwash that uses sage. So you can take some sage leaves and just get the the essence in the water and mix it with hydrogen peroxide. And that is a really good DIY whitening rinse.
Ooh, I have both of those things, so I'm going to try that too. That's great. Okay, so as we wrap up here, this has been a lot of great solutions and strategies people can use. On your website, I think there's a I want to keep my teeth.com. You even have a shopping guide for some products that you like and stuff like that. So what else can people get from you? How can they get your book? How can they work with you? Because I understand you do some coaching too.
Yes. My book is available on Amazon. And yes, thank you. And I do also some telemedicine coaching, especially people want to know why they're losing their teeth, despite best practices, despite regular visits to the dentist. And so I do coach them and try to help them find long-term solutions for why they're teeth and to slow down that progression. And my office telephone number is 310-205-0900. It's on my website.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of people don't give out their phone number right on the podcast, so that's wonderful that you're open and willing to share. So I love that.
Yes.
Now, finally, I like to ask my listeners one final question. My favorite quote is by Audrey Hepburn, and I believe that every day should have at least one exquisite moment in it. So, Dr. Dayan, can I ask what your exquisite moment is today?
Know something, Jadelle? This morning I woke up and I heard some little birds singing outside my window. And I realized that they're there every day, but I don't always pause to listen. And so for me, just that awareness of the gratitude and appreciating nature and appreciating these little birds outside my window that were singing in the morning. And just this realization to just stop and notice these little beautiful moments that nature provides for us. To remind us what a beautiful and expansive world we live in, which I know I'm guilty that I don't always stop to pay attention.
Oh, that is an exquisite moment. I just learned recently that the bird song, like the song of certain birds, can be frequency to your body that actually can calm you. And so maybe you were feeling that, and that's really beautiful that you shared that, because that's what people need to do. They need to pause and reset. And creation and nature is sometimes one of the best ways to tap into that. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for asking. That's a beautiful.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for today. And I will be certain to have you back on because I'm sure there's much more we can dive into about oral health. But in the meantime, you guys grab her book, Keep Your Teeth, a practical guide for everyone. And thank you so much, Dr. Dayan.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been so much fun. I love your channel. I'm a huge fan.
Thank you. Well, keep coming back on and we'll make more good episodes together. What would it feel like to have virtually every supplement known to man at your fingertips? And what if you only had to drink water to get it in? I firmly believe in something called frequency. It's what you feel when you touch a rock that's warmed by the sun. That warmth is frequency. It's how your text message gets to your friend's phone thousands of miles away. It travels on frequency. It's lightning. When the lightning hits the earth, it adds electrons to the earth, and that's how we ground. It's wind, it's brain waves, it's microwaves. Everything has frequency. And now you can write frequencies into your water since water holds frequencies. So imagine if each supplement has its own frequency and you write that into water, you can literally have any supplement, any peptide, any bioidentical hormone in your water. Listen to a podcast I did with a guy named Anton Fedorenko, a leading expert on frequency, and then visit my link in the show notes to Infopathy, or Infoceuticals, which is a way to infuse your water with the frequency of any substance or supplement that you want. Like I said, even peptides, without ever spending a penny on them. Check out the show notes for a link to Infopathy and a special discount code just for my listeners. Well, it's not raindrops on roses, but these are a few of my favorite things that I always notice a difference in my health when I stick to these healthy habits. So number one is watching the sunrise or some sort of red light exposure every single day. Number two is grounding and earthing daily. And sometimes I combine watching the sunrise while swimming in my local lake. First thing in the morning as the sun comes up, I'm grounded, I'm earthed right into this natural body of water. Number three is C60. I've been using a supplement called C60 Purple Power for over 3 years now with great results. I don't intend to stop. I use it for a variety of reasons. And number four, as most of you know, I am a professional paddleboard athlete. So paddleboarding is always part of my weekly regimen of keeping my mind fresh, getting my vitamin P, and keeping my body in a really great healthy state with lots of active relaxation in that form of movement that uses up your entire body. Now I'm going to have a link to a few of the things that make these habits more efficient, more affordable, and effective for me in the show notes of this podcast that I personally use and recommend daily to my clients. The first one is going to be, if you can't get some sort of sunlight exposure, then consider a red light device, which I love SaunaSpace, and I'm going to have a link where you get a 5% discount in saunaspace.com in the show notes here, so check that out. Also, if you need to get grounded, but you're working at a computer all day in an office on the 4th floor, I get it. Let's get a grounding mat underneath your feet, so while you're getting all that EMF exposure, it's actually just getting right out of your body, and you're getting grounded throughout the day. So I'm going to have a link to Ultimate Longevity, where you can get a simple universal mat to put right underneath your feet. And I'm going to have a link to C60 Purple Power, where you can save 10% on this supplement that can be used from anything to more energy, to better hair and skin, to also helping with blisters and bruises and scrapes and even zits. Yes, you can use it even as mouthwash. So there's so much you can do with this. And for paddleboarding, I'm going to recommend Glide SUP, Glide SUP stand-up paddleboards, because they come in inflatable as well as rigid hardboards, and they are by far the best boards I've used as of recent years to make sure that I'm getting a quality board that gets me out on the water and I don't have to worry about it having any issues. So that's glidesup.com, and you can get 10% off using my code that will be in the show notes. So I hope you get to use some of my favorite things, but also reach out and tell me about them. Tell me about what you like about these products too. getfitwithjodelle@gmail.com. Trouble sleeping? Gut issues? Do you know your thyroid is off, but your doctor won't do anything about it? Symptoms don't lie. If you feel like you don't feel good, then something is off. Listen to that inner knowing and reach out. That's what I'm here for, to help guide you towards what's going on at the root of your issues and get them resolved. Bring back your vitality, your energy, your happiness, and get that body you've always wanted with nutrition and lifestyle therapy. I approach it from a very bio-individual way, and each consult is unique to you, where I get to know you and what your body needs. Rates are affordable with different options depending on what you need and what you can afford. No two people are alike, and none of their lifestyles are alike, so I don't approach any consultation the same as another. You are as unique as your fingerprint, so let's get to the bottom of what your body needs and get you looking and feeling as awesome as I know you are. To get started with a free 15-minute discovery call, email me at getfitwithjodelle@gmail.com. That's GETFIT with Jodelle, JODELLE @gmail.com.